Hi, Gustavo. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Rich, I'll first do a small introduction about you in Portuguese. So I'm sorry that you're probably not going to understand. Probably going to get some spikes of it. And then I'm going to start talking to you, okay?
Go ahead.
Ok. Bom dia, boa tarde ou boa noite para todos, né, que estão nos ouvindo. Hoje, meu nome é Gustavo Negreiros, estou como presidente da Sociedade Brasileira de Ecologia Humana e hoje a gente está aqui conversando com o Richard Borden. Ele é o detentor do que a gente chama Cadeira Rachel Carlson de Ecologia Humana, né? Que é uma honra muito grande, uma honraria muito grande. Ele é professor no College of Atlântico, ele também foi um dos idealizadores do próprio college, que, muito interessante, formam pessoas em ecologia humana, com suas especialidades e suas especificidades, mas todos que se formam lá formam em ecologia humana. Foi 20 anos diretor, né, o dean, que a gente chama do College of Atlantic. Também é um dos idealizadores, fundadores da Sociedade de Ecologia Humana, a SABEH, né, do qual também foi presidente. Escritor, autor de vários livros, artigos, além de ser pelo que a gente sabe, ainda não provei, mas um bom cozinheiro, apreciador da música tradicional local, e velejador também. Gosta de velejar e passar tempos velejando em seu barco na costa do Maine, nos Estados Unidos. Então, hello, Rich. I just did a small introduction about you. And it's a very good pleasure for the society, the Brazilian Society of Human Ecology, being able to have you to share some of your thoughts and ideas about human ecology with us. And, well, we cannot discuss human ecology, particularly in the US, without thinking or referring, at least for us, that we see from this side of the world, from Brazil looking to the US, without see your name on publications, on discussions, and on the history of human ecology itself in the US, this moment. So, how human ecology, how did you get engaged with human ecology? How you get involved with human ecology? Can you discuss a little bit and start from there for us?
Yes, and thank you for inviting me to have this conversation with you, Gustavo. I'll go back to the beginning of it for me, and it really is that my education was through the doctoral level in psychology. But as I was entering that as a possible practice, I realized that I really either wasn't ready or that's not what I wanted to do at that point. So I went and I did a postdoctoral studies at Ohio State in ecology, which was a very good ecology school at the time. And that's an entirely different field from psychology. But I was interested in both of them a lot. And I think then the question is, how do I put that together? Not to choose between ecology or psychology, between humans and the environment, but how to put them together. And I went then I was on the faculty for Ohio State for a short while. Then I went to another major university, Purdue University, where I was able to help to begin a program in what was called environmental psychology, which was looking at the way in which the human minds relate to environment and environmental issues. And in the midst of that, a lot of the early work in environmental psychology was looking at how the environment affects people, crowding, noise, things like that. But my psychology really was more from the inside out. I was interested in how the human mind sees its environment and understands its environment and goes. And so in what ways does ecology change the way you look at the world in a different way? And I started looking for places where that might be happening. And I got a letter from a colleague who said that a new college had been just created in Maine, in the northeast of the United States, called College of the Atlantic. And the entire college devoted to the study, the interdisciplinary study of human ecology. That was the first time I heard the phrase human ecology, but the moment I saw it, that's what I'm trying to make sense of. So I immediately wrote to them, and I went there, and for a couple of years, I studied the faculty and the students as a psychologist to understand what kinds of people are these and how do they think. And after a while, I found that what they were doing was more interesting than what I was doing at Purdue, and they sort of thought, well, it might be good to have a psychologist here. So they offered me a job, and then I went there in 1979, and I've been there ever since. I spent 20 years as the academic dean, very involved with program development. And then, as you say in your introduction, I was also the Rachel Carlson Chair of Human Ecology, and that gave me a lot of chance to travel around, and also through all those years to become involved with the creation of the Society for Human Ecology.
Oh, human ecology, it's a field for all of us that work and that study human ecology. I'm not sure if controversial it's the proper word, but it's a lot of discussion. Some think that it's a field of science. Some of them think it's just a paradigm. Some think that is a set of principles to follow into guidelines. What do you think? What is actually human ecology? How would you define, or what do you think about human ecology?
Well, I think the things you just mentioned are all aspects of it. Human ecology is a very broad, a very large mandate. It's very inclusive. It's not only interdisciplinary, it's international, and it's interpersonal, because we as human beings are part of a living world. We are in amongst the ecological world, and trying to understand that in its fullest and most meaningful ways is the ultimate aim of human ecology. So as I go back to when I first started to meet people who called themselves human ecologists, they didn't all start from the same point of view. Everybody came at it from where they were. So some of the human ecologists that I first met were scientists, they were ecologists, or they were conservationists. But there were also people who were in medicine, in public health. There were people who were in urban planning. There were people who were in all different kinds of fields. And some of them even coming from the arts and from the humanities. But they somehow or other were trying to enlarge how they saw things by embracing an ecological perspective. And then as these people came together and met each other, they sort of appreciated each other's different point of view and weren't so concerned about specifically defining human ecology as what is it, but more of how do you gather these perspectives together, and how can we develop this orientation, this point of view. It's not really a discipline by itself alongside other disciplines. It's a reason why we need to be interdisciplinary. So in some ways, the disciplines fit inside it as other things do. And who are these kinds of people? What do they do? How can we know each other? How can we work together? How can we make this point of view legitimate in higher education? How to make it legitimate in policy? How to make it legitimate in planning and in other kinds of applied areas?
Oh, well. We here in Brazil or in Latin America and in those different meetings of human ecology, a lot of times we get ourselves discussing, there are different human ecologies depending from what part of the world, from what culture you arrive from what perspectives you understand the word, or it's, if it is systematic thinking, is depending on the perspective that you approach, you're going to focus in a different way of thinking of human ecology. In that said, then we might have a different perspective of human ecology in Brazil than you do have in the US, and how it is in Europe, how it is in Asia, is all different. And, well, some people think that we need one body of society saying, yes, here is how human ecology should be. And other things that we should be broader, open, and diverse. In that thinking on, it is science or it is not, it is how you see, it's how you understand those different approaches of human ecology worldwide. And should we have one body of human ecology society saying what is human ecology as a whole, or how should we see those different perspectives?
Very good question. And it's also a question that has a history. And so I'll give you a little piece. This human ecology, the phrase, the ideas of human ecology, not an idea of human ecology, but ideas of human ecology, have been around for a century. And I've spent a lot of my time collecting those and putting them together. And one of the things I teach is the history of human ecological thought and practice. But to make it a little more recent, in the 1970s, there was an attempt to create an international organization of human ecology. And they held some meetings, and many people went to it with hoping to do human ecology. But it was defined by a core group of people who felt very strongly that human ecology had to be a science, and just a science. But there were people who came to those meetings who were architects, and they were physicians, and there were people, they were from planning and policy and other kinds of fields, and even from the arts and humanities. And they were not scientists, but they still wanted to do human ecology. So that original attempt to be a single international organization broke apart. And out of that came many regional, smaller human ecological groups, because different groups had different origins themselves. So there was a German Society for Human Ecology that formed, and a Nordic Society, and there was also a Japanese society, and there was and even the U.S. Society for Human Ecology, of which I am a part, was a spin-off from people who felt they needed to go further than that original one went. And then, of course, there were people in Latin America, Paulo Machado, who turned out to end up being a very good friend of mine, and we taught together. He developed human ecology in his perspective and in his university. And so there were all it was like what we say would be a pastiche, or different organizations. There was a Commonwealth Human Ecology Council that organized human ecology programs and people all through the former British Commonwealth. There was another one called the European Association of Human Ecology, which was on the continent, for human ecology programs in Belgium, France, many other countries, and as you know, in Portugal, where Eva Pires is, and she was one of the members of that group. Then all of these different groups. So later on, in the late 90s, we held a meeting in Sweden, and representatives from all of those groups came together and said, what are we doing here? What can we do here? And each group had its own history and its own purposes. And the outcome of that was, we don't need to formalize this and become a single organization. We can be who we are, but we can be partners together. And the Society for Human Ecology that started in the US was first meant to bring together programs in the United States, and there were quite a few of them in North America and elsewhere. But right from the beginning, we knew that there were other people in the world. So part of what we also did was host international conferences, and we've done that for now 40 years. And so they give an opportunity not just to organize ecology people and institutions, but also to get to know each other around the world. And that's been our secondary aim, and we've done that. But I don't think the Society for Human Ecology would consider itself to be the international organization. There are others that, I mean, even your own organizations there in Latin America are doing what you are doing in your region, but you're also seeking to be international at the same time. So in that sense, it's a very loose, I would say, partnership, a gathering of perspectives, and it's good. I think it's good the way it is.
That's interesting because you already answered some of the questions that I had here too.
Okay.
So in this way of understanding the world, understanding us, understanding nature, understanding everyone, in systematically thinking about everything, how you see today the role of human ecology when we are seeing so many crazy things in the world. You know, it's political thinking in Europe, in the US, in Brazil, with extreme, with the extremists, one side or the other, kind of into the debate, and sometimes even into violence. Issues like racism being raising up so strongly, in forests burning in the US, in Brazil, governments that kind of close their eyes to what we are, to the environmental issues, to the social issues. All this pandemic work, the COVID pandemic kind of reaching us and putting us in this situation in the world. How you see that the human ecology relates or is attached or is linking to all those crazy events that the world is facing today, or particularly the US and Brazil, there are similar positions, politically speaking.
Yes, I know. Well, that's a lot of issues, and we could talk a long time, and we could create a program that would go on and teach classes around this, and we're doing that. So to make it short, let me say that to simplify human ecology, because I've written a book recently that has 14 chapters, where in each one I try to address different aspects of human ecology. And if you know the artist Pablo Picasso, and you know what cubism is, he made this thing where he would make an image and it had many facets around it. And it wasn't the image itself, but it was the way in which you could see the image from different angles. And so I wrote this book as if it was different facets around human ecology. And then by looking at all of them together, somehow you see what it is that it's about. But if I simplify it down, it really comes down to two underlying elements, sources of it. And to make it simple, it's one side of human ecology is inside. It's inside human beings. It's our minds. And another part of human ecology is what's outside. It's actually the world itself. And together, and bringing those together is what human ecology seeks to do. And so there are quite a number of people who sort of define human ecology from the inside point of view, where they talk about human ecology as a perspective, or it's an attitude, or it's a way of looking at the world, right? It's sort of mental. And then in addition to that, there are other people who emphasize the outside more, and they see it more as there is a living world out there. And we need to know how the living world really works. And so that side of it is the environmental. So you've got the mental and environmental sides, and it comes together. And in some ways, that is why me, the psychologist and the ecologist, am happy to see those things come together, because that's sort of how I see the world. So now to come directly to your question, let's take the forest fires that are happening in your country, in our country right now, and they're terrible. But you as a forest ecologist know that forest fires have gone on forever. You know that there's a major field of forest ecology, but you also know that forest ecology is not just about trees. It's about lots and lots of other kinds of things. And when I'm talking about having a human ecological perspective, those who have a human ecological perspective, when they see forest fires, they don't just see the trees. They see the people, they see the policies, they see the water, they see the climate change. They see it in a very big way. And I would say that that is the way we need to see those kinds of things, to be able to understand them and to deal with them. And the same thing with the COVID right now. The COVID is by itself a small virus. And at that level, at the microbial level, you can say that's what it is. But in the world, around the world, it touches virtually everything now, from the economy to, air travel, to people's different kinds of health, to, physiology, to air, and on and on. And so you almost have to see these things as human ecologically to really grasp what's going on. And that's not just those two, but those are two that are in the news right now. And up against that, we are currently, I think, in many places in the world, not finding in our leadership that kind of open-mindedness to things. And there are many people in the world, many countries in the world, that are really taking climate as a really serious issue and are willing to get together to understand it and work on it. But then there are some that want to deny that. And from my point of view, it is the human ecological approaches that need to be developed and furthered.
Very, very, very interesting. In the same way that I see the world needs more of those ways of systematically understanding or systematically thinking to understand the world in all those different facets. You're talking about forest fires. I teach a class here about fire ecology, in which we do exactly see the fire in three different dimensions, the physical dimension of fire, the ecological dimension of fire, and the human dimension of studying fires. Exactly. And I like to understand all those different angles and how we approach the problem of forest fires. It's not just the water, and it's not just the ones that are setting the fire. There is all those different things together. But at the same time, I see one problem that sometimes, particularly relating with human ecology, is that universities and general governments tend to separate and to have this tendency in putting everything in little boxes, and particularly sometimes universities and the scientists, our scientific side, our Cartesian scientific side, always try to define those different little boxes and try to define those different issues, and have this difficulty to think not only transdisciplinarily, but understanding the whole system living of things. And we see in the US and here in Brazil, people not valuing, people not understanding what is human ecology, and actually undermining the discussion of the human ecology and trying to change the name of programs or questioning and say, hey, you study human ecology, what are you going to be as human ecologists? What are you going to do as human ecologists? What are you actually studying? So what we can do in our countries or in Brazil or in the US to increase the value of human ecology thinking, of understanding the world not on those little boxes, but understanding the world as a living thing. What can we do to, I think it's a two-faced question. Is one side is what we can do to improve the value or value more human ecology, and the other side is what we can do in practice, or what is the practice of human ecology for the ones that are actually today studying human ecology.
Oh, yes. Yes, and you've opened up a can here. There are many issues and many approaches here, but Where can I start? There are many obstacles to human ecology, for people to understand what it is, to make it happen, and to apply it. There are many different kinds of obstacles. One area that makes it more difficult is the way that universities and higher education is actually structured. The history of higher education, I'm thinking of universities in particular now, the last 200 years of higher education in the world has mostly developed fields of study as specialty areas, call them disciplines or departments, but to get more and more segregated in the way that we know what we know. Now, I don't want to be overly critical here because I love universities. And I actually was at the largest one in the United States, Ohio State, when it was the largest. And it was very exciting to be at a place that had that dedication to all these different fields. And it was wonderful. And the people who were there were very good at what they were doing, but they were not doing human ecology. And it would be very hard for them to do human ecology because if I, the psychologist, wanted to talk to a philosopher and somebody in political science and some other field, they were a mile away from me in a separate building. Those people never talked to each other. So those are really good at doing things in a disciplinary way, but the structure of them is very bad at doing things in an interdisciplinary kind of way. That's why College of the Atlantic was founded. The college was founded to have no departments, to have an interdisciplinary faculty, and the only thing we're doing is trying to create education that makes sense and practical use out of human ecology. And there are other places that have done this. It's been hard in an established big university to do that because you've got a couple of 100 years of making bricks into buildings, and the architecture is really complicated. But there are places that are developing interdisciplinary programs and interdisciplinary centers, even in the biggest universities. And some of them are even doing human ecology. I think that's what you're doing, right? You're in an already existing institution, but you say, we can pull these pieces of this together and we can make human ecology happen over here. And that's what's happening around a lot of places in the world. And you've been to many of them. And what we are, you and I and these other people, are the people who are trying to make that happen, not instead of universities, but in addition to universities. And to make that happen, you have to have people who are committed to it, I think as you are, as I am, and are willing to speak out loud, and also to get the attention of the people at the top of universities to commit that they want their universities not only to be great at disciplinary work, but also to stand out for doing interdisciplinary work. And human ecology is a reason to be interdisciplinary in its broadest ways.
That brings us to one final question from my side is, in Brazil, at the Brazilian Society of Human Ecology, we are always debating, and it's an interesting debate, if human ecology then should be academic or should be a practice, or should we be an academic society or should we be a professional society? If you are a professional society, what is then a professional in human ecology? What is an human ecologist?
You want my answer? My answer is yes. Yes, yes, and yes. I think, yes, it should be an academic pursuit that should have a lot of flexibility in it for different people to take on their areas of interest in a broad, let us say, human and ecological way. Because there's a lot of different kinds of problems in the world. There's not just one problem. And so people have to learn how to approach many different kinds of issues. We just mentioned COVID and forest fires, and we can go on and on and on about food systems and all that kind of stuff. I think the human ecological approach is the balanced and reasonable approach. And that's where these things become applied. They all have their applications. They have their applications in health. They have their applications in medicine. They have their applications in all kinds of ways to bring it down in the ground. And I think you and I have mentioned before, I would think that if I were going to become the mayor of a city, I would be a better mayor if I had studied some human ecology and I understood understood the complexities of all the things that it takes to make a city, which is a human ecological event in the world, to make that as rich and fulfilling as it could be, going from the knowing how to do the economics, to know how the food gets here, to how to handle the water supply, to handle waste, to handle all kinds of things, transportation systems, and even to how to make it a beautiful community. All of that together is what human ecology is about. Now, that person wouldn't have all those answers, but they would not be uncomfortable bringing in people who knew those aspects of it, and it could be a much richer conversation and maybe a much more livable community. And that's I mean, you could apply this all the levels from the household, as some human ecologists do, all the way up through all the different regions, all the way up to the planet as a whole, which is, I think, the aim that is behind at least the many countries who are trying to look at the global issues of climate altogether, because the solutions to those don't happen in one place. They happen by people working together.
Well, Richard, thank you very much for all those inspiring words. Really, really appreciate your time and your willingness to talk and to discuss those issues with us. And in those final minutes, I'd like just to make an open question for you. Anything that you want to message that you want to send to students, professionals, professors that work with human ecology in Brazil, in Latin America?
Oh, so many, really. But the main thing is, I think the first step in human ecology is to try, to just try, to move in the direction towards the broader, complex understanding of how things really are in the world, and bring to it our human sense of responsibility and morality to being in the world. I sometimes look at human ecology, let us say, through language, and to be able to know or to appreciate what was, to understand the past, how things were, how things are right now in the fullest sense of it, how they will never be again this way, or as they once were, why, and how come it has changed, and to be a part of that change. And then especially to look at how the world could be, and further, how the world should be. And so if we look at how it is, how it was, how it will never be again, how it could be, and how it should be, as a way of just looking at everyday life and then our careers and our communities, we will be taking the first step in the direction of human ecology.
Thank you very much, Richard. Really appreciate your time.
It was really enjoyable, and I'm hoping to find my way back down to your place sometime in the near future again.